It's the occult pod. Welcome to occult pod. We talk about conspiracies and other different things about the simulation. Welcome to occult pod. Welcome to occult pod. Hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the podcast. This time it's a solo podcast, but we'll have guests on soon after this, and we're talking about a decisive figure in the world of politics. Be assured this isn't going to be a political podcast where we're going to debate, like NPCs about who's the best politician and whatnot. But we're speaking about a decisive figure, Mr. Donald Trump, and in our case, he's a very funny individual. Rowan here likes to do impressions of the man, but we're here to pose a question that we've seen a lot recently, and obviously his recent arrest in Georgia. Will he be the next president of the United States? What do you think, Rowan?
Yeah, I think 100% he'll be the next president of the United States. And the reason being is because there's a Simpsons episode where it actually predicts this. There's like a screen grab, which Al Jean posted. Al Jean's like one of the co-producers of Simpsons. And in the background, like there's a screenshot of Homer flying. He's flying over a parade, I think. I'm not 100% sure on the episode name. I couldn't actually find it. But in the background, there's a sign that says Trump 2024. And we know how accurate the predictions from The Simpsons are. It's just, if the Simpsons predict it at some stage, then it's definitely going to happen. Whether that's just because they fire so many darts at the board that one sticks, or that Matt Groening's the time traveler and he can see what happens in the future. Who knows? There's also an episode, just to go straight into like the predictive programming side of things, there's also an episode of The Simpsons where it's quite an old one. I think it came out in 2000 or 2001, where Lisa becomes the president, and there's a passing comment about how Trump, who was in power before her, left the country in a state, which is it's just a kind of crazy like connection to make there. It was so like passed off as just like a throwaway comment, but if you listen back to it, it sounds like, I don't know, it seems like something that has actually happened. But yeah, I feel like Trump is definitely at this stage poised to be the next president. I think everything's lined up for him to be the next president, and that it's by design at the end of the day. It's by design, 100%. I think there's a whole divide between him as a Republican and then Biden as a Democrat, and it's quite obvious to me, don't know if it's obvious to anyone else, that Biden has just been put there as like a puppet of sorts who is completely incompetent and is just a bumbling idiot, can't even complete a full sentence without stuttering at least 10 times, can't even walk upstairs into the plane. And I think that's completely by design. I think they've just put him in place to make him look like an absolute imbecile. So it means that the next president, they'll obviously make this comparison between him and Trump and be like, oh, well, Trump was much better of a president, because like you don't know what you've got until it's gone. So people are going to be like more poised and more in a position to be accepting of Donald Trump. Whether you believe that Trump is going to be a great president or not, let's leave politics out of it, but it does seem that way if you look at it from that angle. It does seem like there's a bit of a setup there, and it's like the Hegelian dialectic, if people are aware with that theory. So it's like you essentially like come up with a problem, and then you create the solution for it, and then that makes it seem for people like, oh, you've come up with a solution, so we should trust you, which would be like, oh, they've created the problem of like Biden being in control. But at first it was everyone was going at Trump. They hated Trump so much. He was like an awful person. And then they bring Biden in to make him look like an idiot. And then they bring Trump in as the savior. And they're like, oh, the people will be like, oh, thank you for saving us from that. So it's like it's a very interesting roundabout way of doing things. But I think that's where it seems to be going at the minute. Don't know what you think about that, Ingon there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what you said I agree with, especially with the fact that now he's, according to the news and the mainstream, he's currently in prison. So if they set him up to be president, to be reinstated from jail to become the president, it's like the savior almost. Like there's often comparisons made in the conspiracy world where people suggest that this guy is in fact the Antichrist. I don't know what you think about that. There's been many suggestions hypothesizing that, he's like the false Messiah in a sense. Sometimes he's often compared to even to Jesus, which may be a mockery of the Messiah himself. But I'd like to know what you think about that as well, the whole Antichrist thing.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, it's like a false savior, a blinding light that will come in and be atop the throne. And I think people are willing to accept it. I don't know if you're familiar with Donnie Darkand, I believe his Twitter thread is, his Twitter handle. But
Yes, I'm
that's where I
aware
got
of
a
it.
lot of, yeah, it's where I got a lot of the information from in terms of the fact of Trump being the Antichrist. And it's actually quite an interesting theory that he poses, because primarily the idea is that the last people to be fooled by Satan is the Christians, and a lot of Christians at the minute you see are fervently supporting Trump to be like the savior of the Western world, essentially, and they want Trump to be the next big thing. And I think that seemingly could be. I'm not 100% pinning the fact that Trump is the Antichrist, but it does seem like there's something going on in terms of the fact that a lot of Christians seem to be comparing him to Christ at the minute, and there's actually quite a lot of base in the idea of the comparisons between Trump and Christ. A lot of people would argue, especially like Donnie Darkand, that Trump is essentially like a mockery of Jesus in a sense. Even if you look through his family lineage, so for example, Trump's mother, so like the matriarch of the Trump family was actually, her surname was Christ, which is actually quite interesting. And Trump's mother is called Mary. Obviously, you have Mary Magdalene, which is Jesus's mother as well. And then as well, there's more. So there's just give me one moment. There's an aunt called Elizabeth, who was the matriarch of the house, and Jesus had an aunt called Elizabeth. Cousin John, who Jesus had a cousin John as well. So it seems like there's a lot of connections there to Christ, and obviously there's the Christ family that goes back. Also, as well, in like the Masonic text and like playing cards, that you have the trump card. Everyone knows the trump card. Everyone's like, oh, the trump card is it's like it's just a common saying, isn't it? It's like you have literally the trump cards, like the playing cards that you can get over here with like different things. It's like whatever wins trumps it, and either that was something that's been planted long ago into our psyche, is like, oh, there's a connection there, or if it's just complete coincidence. But there seems to be some sort of like prophecy being fulfilled where like the Trump card is like representative of like Donald Trump coming in and basically being the savior that people don't expect to come. And it's like, oh, that's the Trump card. That's like what is going to trump the rest of the world, and it's going to come in. It's going to be the Messiah. It's going to be the person that basically like overthrows the deep state, as he says, and drains the swamp. So yeah, I think there can be a lot argued for that. Even if we look into like gematria, there's a lot of gematria going into the whole situation with Donald Trump. I mean, I remember reading something a while ago. It was about how Trump was actually put in power, so it actually became president exactly 6,666 weeks after the birth of Adolf Hitler. So that obviously is just very coincidental, but it's actually quite an interesting synchronicity. And as well, so the recent attack on Israel, there's actually a lot of connections. I think like Adam from The Illusion, who we had on the podcast before, and also Donnie Darkand would argue that there's a lot of interesting connections between Israel and Trump. For example, the recent Israel attack was exactly 36 weeks before Trump's upcoming birthday. So 36 like 3 sixes, like 666, or 666 being the 36th triangular number. So there's some gematria laid in there. And I think there's this push for Trump to also almost be seen as or placed in a power of like the Messiah. It seems like they're lining him up to be. So I know that we're looking into like the genealogy, like rabbis in Israel looking into the genealogy of King David. and they're trying to make a connection between him and Trump, and that's supposed to be like bringing in the way for the new Messiah, who Trump will be, and also people told Trump that his name equals the Messiah in gematria, and that equals to 424. And there's an interesting video that went up a while ago of Trump touching the Western Wall. He was actually the first president to do it. So he touched the Western Wall in Israel, which is like one of the most sacred walls. And the moment he touches it, the clock turns to 424, which is really interesting because obviously, like we just said about the 424 connection. So there's an interesting coincidence there. Now, can you call that coincidence? I'm not 100% sure, but there seems to be a lot of weird connections going on, at least at some level. Like we say with like the Messiah, it seems like they're mocking Jesus and they want to bring in. Now, I'm not arguing for any side here. I'm just like stating the facts. But from a Christian perspective, if they wanted to mock Jesus and bring in like the new Messiah, who they believe is who should have been in place of Jesus, they would probably go ahead and mock the person they want to ridicule, and so they have Trump come in, and he's basically the same as Jesus in the fact that he's got a mother called Mary, aunt called Elizabeth, cousin called John, same as Jesus, and then so it's quite interesting. It does go very deep. Don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, some nice connections you put up there, and obviously Trump being in Israel, it wasn't a surprise. Like the whole wall is all connected, as it's all there to serve Western interests. But as with the US, obviously the economy there's probably not great, so it's probably been designed that way to ensure that Trump comes in and saves the US. Obviously. You've talked earlier, and we spoke earlier about perhaps Biden's incompetence, that it's been done in design to ensure that Trump comes in and saves the US. But like the whole Antichrist thing, I think there is possible truth, but again, it's all hypothetical at the end of the day. And what really is the Antichrist, we never know. But there is sufficient evidence, well, not evidence, I should say, support to suggest that it's true. You've got the whole Trump Tower, how he came about as an entrepreneur and then somehow becoming president. He was on a show with Oprah Winfrey in the 1980s. I don't know if you're aware of that. I think it was with her. And
where
he's asked if he'll be president. Yes. Obviously, that's another level of predictive programming there. Whether it's predictive programming or just manifestation coming into light, or the elites prophesizing his script, let's say. It could be the case that even back then, did they know that he was going to be president, I think, in 2016? I don't know.
God knows. Well, it's like we argue the thing about everything being scripted anyway. Everything's just like a script at the end of the day. And we're just running on a script. But at the same time, like, I think there probably is some level of like magic or predictive programming going on there where they want to put it into people's psyches that Trump is at some point going to be president. It does seem predestined. Like, I'm not going to lie. I think with almost 99% certainty that Trump will be the president in 2024. Like, I really don't doubt for a second. There's maybe a smidge of me that could doubt the fact that he might be president. But for the time being, as it stands, I cannot see anyone getting anywhere near to the level of popularity that Trump has at the minute, and the amount of momentum going into that presidency. Like, I think people just want Biden out as soon as possible. Like, obviously, I'm not 100% in tune with American politics because I don't live there. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are just tired of Biden. Is that by design? That could 100% be by design, that people just put him in there in that position of power because he's senile and he doesn't know what's going on. It's like the whole twin pillars, the red and the blue. It's a distraction of senses. It's basically just it's not a true representation of how life is. It's like it's just you're choosing one side or the other at the same time. But it's all about neutrality, and I think what they want is just to separate people and to keep them divided. And that's one of the ways to do it, is to just have people bicker over like left or right, red or blue. It's the whole twin pillars side of like masonry, where you have like Boaz and Yakin, like the twin the twin towers at the temples, the twin pillars. Sorry, and it's all a distraction tactic at the end of the day, and I think they just want people divided and separated. And politics is another way to do that. It's two people playing the same side. Is the Janus is the head, the two-sided head, which is aiming both ways. It's the same coin. It's the same coin there, but at the same time, people are bickering over which side is right, and don't think either side is right at the end of the day. And yeah, people are just put in power because they decided that they get put in power at the end of the day. There's not really much decision on the part of people to decide who's actually in a position of power. But I think we get distracted over like the little things and arguing over who's right and who's wrong, or who's right and who's left. Yeah.
Exactly, and there's no better way of him being president, as he is perhaps the most decisive man on the planet. Anything he says, one side will agree, the other will disagree, and it's just going to cause chaos. I mean, obviously in the US last year, there was the whole Capitol riots. I don't know if that was the inauguration, I believe.
On Jan 6th.
Yes.
Yeah. That was that was the Capitol. That was when they claimed that Trump instigated the attacks on the Capitol building, and they say it was as bad as 9/11.
Yeah, you see what I mean. So like, order out of chaos. That's what the Freemasons love. So it's there for people to be distracted by all of this. Well, again, people may say the attack is a psyop or whatever, but nevertheless, it was a distraction regardless, and all the division is there to, ruin, not necessarily ruin, but to keep people distracted, as you said before. Like it keeps them away from their purpose, and yeah, that's it really. I mean, you just gotta stay away from it all. Like it's all chaos really. Like
it's just so easy to get wrapped up in, isn't it? All that.
Mm-hmm. It's like you never know what's going to happen with Trump. 1 minute they say he's in jail, 1 minute they say he's, on his Truth social account that he's going to be instated or whatever. So you don't know with him. That's it's his job at the end of the day.
Well, to me, that just seems like a lot of chicane. It's just all like a puppet show, is that, isn't it? At the end of the day, like, has he actually been arrested? Has he actually gone to jail? I think that's just part of it. I think they just want to make him out to be like this bad person, and then everyone starts rooting for him more because they're like, why have you put him in jail? That's a load of rubbish. Like, it's so obviously a stupid decision to put him in jail when they've got Biden doing the exact same thing, but they don't do anything to Biden. I think it's just so obvious that people will get annoyed at it, and then they'll start rooting for Trump because they'll see him as the underdog. And then when he comes out, but I think it's just they're playing for the same team at the end of the day. They're just playing on two levels, and I think Trump's just playing his part very well. And don't get me wrong, I love Trump. Like, I think he's a funny guy, very funny. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think he's on our side. I think it's like a Masonic rise from darkness to light. It's like a false awakening, essentially. I think that's what we're experiencing at the minute. Really, I think that's a lot. Like, not on a level where we know about like being more yourself and like surrounding yourself with better people and improving yourself. I think they want like the falls to light, as in to get distracted by all the politics and believe that the world's going to crap and that it's going to be saved by some messiah, and that's their false awakening. And people are like, oh, we've made it out, because they want to create like their own utopia. And it's like a false awakening at the end of the day, and it's bringing people up to their level. I think you could argue a lot as well that it's about the destruction of like religion. They want to get rid of religion as we know it, so they're bringing in these like political figures and stuff like that to basically replace those religious figures we've had in the past. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But as well, on the note of Trump getting put in jail, there's also the mugshot that became very popular. Which is a great mugshot. You know the one, I'm sure. I think everyone's seen it at this point. And there was a divide as to whether people loved that picture or hated that picture as well. People
Really?
so it was a great picture because so many people paid attention to it. It was like perfectly shot, I think, because some people loved it for the fact that they were like, "Oh, Trump looks cool. This is like such a cool, badass picture." And then other people were like, "Oh, thank God he's in jail. Thank God he's locked up. This is a great photo because he's been locked up, and it's representative of we've got rid of Trump." So great picture. But
I don't
yeah,
particularly
go on.
go on,
Sorry,
man.
what?
Like I
No,
was
no,
gonna
you go,
say,
bro. It's fine.
I don't really get why people would celebrate that he's in jail. What difference does it make to your life that he's in jail? You know, like it's pretty hilarious when you think about it. But it's pretty interesting. Obviously, arrested in Georgia, and recently, I don't know if it was recently or last year. I can't remember. But obviously, the attack on the Georgia Guidestones was
Yeah.
pretty significant as well.
Oh, I
Whether that
don't know
relates
about
to
that. What's
Trump
that?
or the Georgia Guidestones,
Yeah, I don't
something
know about
about
that. What's that?
there was a set of statements on there about like depopulation and all that that was destroyed 42 years after it was created. So,
Oh, really? Oh, what? They've got rid of it now?
well, it was they destroyed it.
What, protesters?
No, no, there's some. Let me check.
It's
I
only
think it was
recent.
last year.
I don't remember that at all.
You don't
That's crazy. I
remember?
knew about the Georgia Guidestones because it says something like keep the Earth's
Yeah,
population at, was it 500 million or something like that?
yeah, 500 million. Yeah, it was blown
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
I
really?
think. Yeah, on
Oh, wow.
the 6th of July last year.
Oh, that's interesting. So I wonder if that was like QAnon, or I wonder if that was actually some protesters going up there and blowing it up. I don't know. Or they've done it as an inside job and made it look like it's someone else doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not exactly sure whether that connects with Trump or not, but it's interesting nevertheless.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. 100%. The whole thing with the mugshot, though, as well. So in that picture, there's actually like an interesting rundown that I didn't even make a connection between that I heard. So, have you seen Zoolander, the film?
No, I've not seen it.
Never seen Zoolander. So it's Ben Stiller is a model in it. People always say that Trump does like the blue steel pose, and in that mugshot, I think you can argue that he does like the blue steel pose, which is sort of like a pouting thing. It looks like he's pouting in a way, and it's interesting because that pose is called the blue steel, and obviously you have the connection there between Trump always saying that the election was stolen. Now, obviously, it was a blue steal because it was the Democrats stealing the election from the Republicans. So it's blue steal, which is quite interesting. Whether that was like purposeful, it's a nice little nod to whoever was in the know there, or like actually made the connection. But I think that to a degree just shows that there's something going on in terms of the fact that the world being a stage. And at the end of the day, like, why would you release your mugshot anyway? I just think that's a weird thing to do. Or like, why would you let it be released? I guess it's cool. It's great for publicity at the end of the day, though. The publicity
Yeah,
is absolutely amazing. And whether he knew that, like, whether he knew on a level that it was like, oh, I'm going to do the blue steel pose because it's showing that it's like a blue steel, like the Democrats stealing the election. Possibly he did that. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought that was really interesting.
yeah. It's like I just searched up the blue steel, and it does look quite similar to the mugshot that Trump posed, which is pretty unique. And as well, like that is very good symbolism, you know, as Manly P. Horse said, man, the world is symbols. I'm just paraphrasing what he said, but it's all symbolic. So if people see the symbols, they'll know what it really means. And what you said there with that mugshot and the connection could possibly be true. So again,
Yeah,
whoever is on the know is they're not geniuses, they're just intelligent to put out symbolism that most people do not understand or even know.
yeah. Well, it's Twilight language. That's what it's called. So Twilight language is like where you use a system of symbols and codes So your brain won't pick it up on a conscious level, but it picks it up on a subconscious level, and that's why you have so many symbols used in the public. It's like the whole thing we talked about with the Starbucks logo and things like that. Where I think Sylvia tweeted this after we'd actually done the episode, and we didn't actually pick it up. So it might be good to mention now. So the Starbucks logo is actually like of a mermaid who took money from the poor. So essentially, the Starbucks logo is solidifying in the subconscious of people that go there and purchase their stuff that you're essentially a peasant, and that's keeping you at that level. And you're always going to be second to the people in power, and you're always going to be being served by them, which is actually quite interesting. I'm not saying don't go to Starbucks. I mean, I don't really go to Starbucks, but at the same time, it's like these symbols and codes that people use. So like the Trump one would be an example of that, whether it was a conscious level. I think a lot of the speaking that we do is actually on a subconscious level and we don't even realize it. A lot of things is energy, and symbols comes into that.
Yeah, that's true. And you messaged me before, actually. You had a dream one night about Mr. Donald Trump.
Oh my God. That's true, but I can't even remember what the dream was about now. When was that? That was like a few weeks ago, wasn't it? Let me just double check. I don't know if I put anything in there. What was the dream about? Where did I put it? Give me a moment. I'm going to have to read through the messages now.
Yes, that's it. I'm just checking.
Did I message you on Discord about it?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you said that it was on the 12th of October, so that just over 2 weeks ago. You said you had a dream about Trump and that he won the elections, and then there would be this one is not I'm gonna say it, but you said that there will be a lot of terrorist attacks.
That was the dream. I do remember it now. I do remember glimpses of the dream now. Yeah, he won the election. And then I just remember going around everywhere and just loads of stuff was blowing up and like people getting blown up and stuff like that. It wasn't a very fun dream. But at the same time, I don't know if that's just planted in the subconscious. I don't know if I'm seeing things. I don't know if I'm predicting the future. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if that does happen, then people say you controlled opposition, mate.
Well, possibly. Like in my dream, it was immediately after he got like inaugurated that terrorist attacks started happening. So I think if that happened in real life, that would be like a bit ridiculous, and I think people would suss it out too quickly. I think they always do that though. They always have like little examples of. They always put things in the subconscious, or they put things in the conscious that people might pick up on. It's like when we were trying to predict like the World Cup, who were going to win the World Cup and stuff like that. Like Jude Bellingham scoring the first goal, and he was number 22, and it was the 2022 World Cup, and little bits like that. And you had the 8, and there was a connection with 8 and England. I can't remember what it was now, something like that. But they have things like that where it's like you can actually find it if you look, but there's things hidden below the surface that you're not picking up on, and that just goes amiss, and then you miss those little codes until it's like too late, So I think it's just to confuse people at the end of the day and send people into many different directions, because if you confuse people then they don't know where they're going, you're basically in a labyrinth. You're in the rabbit hole and you don't know which direction is the right way to go. And that's the whole thing with like the left and right, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, like you have two sides, two oppositions, and they're basically fighting the same battle, but we'll be shaking hands backstage.
Yeah, WWE.
Yeah, WWE. Well, Trump was on WWE as well. Here's another point. It's like the whole thing with Ronald Reagan as well. Like Trump is an entertainer at the end of the day. Like he's a businessman, yeah, you can argue he's a businessman, but at the same time he's been on WWE and he's an entertainer.
Yeah,
I think there's got to be something going on there with like him. Yeah.
It's like you got the popular Christmas show that everyone watches, Home Alone. He was a he featured it on there, if you remember, with the actor. Macaulay
That's the
Culkin.
thing, though. Here's the thing that makes me suspect as well. Trump was absolutely adored by everyone, and I mean everyone before, like, he got into power. Like you say, Oprah. He was on Home Alone. He was in WWE, and he didn't really have many like haters. Like rappers and stuff used to love him, and then as soon as he became president, people started hating him. And is that by design? Was that by design? Were people like, oh, we have to start hating him now to make it look like he's the bad guy, and then we bring Biden in, who's even worse. He's terrible. So people will get annoyed with us, and then we'll flip the script, and then we'll have Trump back in, so people will love him even more now. And then that props him up as like the Messiah.
Yeah, most likely is the case. To be fair, I mean, why Trump was so hated because he'd be controversial. He would say stuff
Yeah.
that would target a specific group of people and alienate that group of people from him intentionally, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it was very like cleverly worded at the end of the day, where like you could get away. It was sort of like black and white. I mean, it wasn't black and white. It was like in a grey area where you didn't actually know what he was saying, but you could easily flip it both ways. You could either say he was being racist, or you could say, no, it wasn't racist at all. Like he just said something. Like you can see both sides of it if you look at it from like both angles.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably by design. You get him to say these things that are like sort of controversial, but at the same time they're not. Like the borderline, so people can have a reason to hate him, and then people won't, and that'll cause more divide between people. And as we spoke about in the past, like the divide is the biggest thing when it comes to control. It's easier to control a separated and divided populace than it is to just control a group of people that are all together and fighting the same battle.
yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously, we know Trump is not the only one. People like Andrew Tate and Piers Morgan are the decisive figures that, like, every time they speak, there's always a level of controversy surrounding their statements. So they're just there to play their roles at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's controlled opposition, isn't it? But obviously, like, we can't prove the fact that it's controlled opposition.
Yeah,
You never know.
it's just
Maybe it's
exactly.
It's by design. It's interesting as well. Obviously, I've like the connection between Israel at the minute and Trump, and people saying, or like the rabbis and stuff, like paving a way for him to be the Messiah. There's also a thing with the coin. Let me just see if I can find this. Let me see if I can pull this up. That Donnie Darkened put on his Twitter thread. There's an interesting thread. I think I shared it on the Occult Pod Twitter. Let me just find it really quick. So it was a comparison between him and King Cyrus, who is a king in Israel, I believe. And so many people make the connection between him and King Cyrus. Let me just see if I can pull up the thread really quick. Go into our account. Ooh. He was also handed the Torah crown as well, which is like a crown in Israel. And there was a mission statement that was given by the Israel Heritage Foundation, which stated, to await King David's descendant, our Messiah, to rule over land and bring peace to all nations. Now, obviously, we know how much of a peace negotiator Trump is heralded to be. That goes for the fact that when he marched into North Korea and he had good relations with Kim Jong-un, he went over and created peace there. He might have called him fat, like in a passing comment. I'll sneak this in. But at the same time, they still managed to create peace between the two countries, and also peace in the Middle East, like it was getting the troops out of the Middle East. So I think people see Trump as like a peacekeeper, and this is sort of like, it seems like they're paving the way almost for Trump to be the Messiah. And where was this here? Right, okay, I found it. So in February 2018, I'm going to credit Donnie Darkened as well, because like most of this information comes from his Twitter thread. I'm not just going to like not pin him. So go check him out on Twitter if you can. So in February 2018, an Israeli organization, the Mikdash Educational Center, minted a temple coin bearing the image of Donald Trump beside King Cyrus, a Persian king whom the Jews referred to as a Messiah, though he was a Gentile. So they have the coin comparing him to King Cyrus, who they hailed as the Messiah at the time. So there's that comparison there. King Cyrus conquered Babylon, which freed the Jews, allowing them to return home to build the second temple. The back of the Trump temple coin is, of course, the third temple. So there is a lot of talk at the minute of restoring the third temple in Jerusalem, which is actually quite interesting as well, because I don't want to get into that territory at all, but it's like, I don't know, there seems to be some setting up for Trump to be the Messiah, which is actually quite interesting. And then there's a video of him touching the wall at 424 when he's been called the Messiah, which equals 424. And also, Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel on the nation's 70th year anniversary since its founding. Trump was born 700 days before the founding of Israel, and he was inaugurated when he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. And the coin that they gave, that they passed out, says on it, it says to fulfill 70 years, and you have those connections with 70 there. So, yeah, there does seem to be some sort of setting up between that and Trump becoming the Messiah, which is actually quite interesting. And in the Bible, it does say as well that, I might be butchering the quote completely, but essentially talking about the Antichrist coming in, and it's saying that you will not accept me as Christ. However, someone will come in their own name, and you will receive. So that is actually interesting because it says he's coming in his own name. Now everyone knows how important Trump's name is to him. You only have to be in New York to know how important it is to him. The buildings, the Trump towers, Trump is like the most important thing to Trump. And he's going to come in his own name and you will accept him. So, yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. And it's sort of like he's this false light, is this false savior that's going to come in and create peace amongst the world. He'll stop the wars, and then he'll be heralded as the new savior. Should be quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, next year will be an interesting year on the world stage. So when if he does become president, then the world will just have to watch and see what the man does. But I think earlier when we started, you talked a little, you briefly mentioned time travel, and there's that whole, I think it was Back to the Future. I don't know if it's Back to the Future or another.
There is a Back to the Future reference to it.
Yeah, Back to the Future reference of his son Baron Trump or someone.
Yeah, Baron Trump.
Yeah, of him being the time traveler.
Well, there's a book called The Adventures and Travels of Baron Trump. Have you seen about that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I read about that theory back in 2017 or something like that. But yeah, there's a book, The Adventures of Baron Trump. Baron Trump is his son, but in the book there's a time machine that was handed to him by his father, I believe, in the story. I could be butchering that. Is that right? Do you know?
I'm not too sure.
Right. But yeah, the story revolves around a time traveler. Baron Trump is traveling through time. People argue that Donald is Baron, so it's kind of sort of this like weird time travel thing going on. Possibly he got hold of some secret technology that people didn't have access to, and is able to travel through time and manipulate things and change things and put himself in power. But then, yeah, you have the relation to the Back to the Future episode, the second film, I believe it is, where Marty gets put into a bad timeline where Biff is essentially Donald Trump. Like, he seems like it's definitely modelled after Donald Trump, 100%, because he has like the blonde hair, he has like the casino, and he just acts like Trump. I think he wears a robe that looks like a robe that Trump has worn in the past, and I think it's just modelled after, and like the buildings like Biff or something like that. I'll have to double check that. Hang on. Yeah, so the building is actually called. Is it called Biff Towers? Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise Casino and Hotel, and the picture on the front definitely looks like something Trump would have. Like, yeah, it's quite. There's an interesting connection there between the two. Yeah, the stuff like that. It's just it just seems to be like Trump is this figure that is so prominent in just culture that it seems so difficult to ignore.
Yeah. Like how you mentioned with the whole 8 thing with the World Cup and all that stuff. If he does become president next year, it'll obviously be 8 years since he first became president.
That's the point. And we know what the 8 is as well. The 8 representative of the snake eating its own tail. It's the Ouroboros.
Yeah. That's it.
On the note of Baron Trump as well, I've managed to get hold of a thread that leans into the idea of the time travel theory. This is from 6 years ago, so it is about the same time that I remember reading it back in 2017. If you find it on Reddit, you'll know there's going to be some deep shit on there. Everyone knows Reddit is the place to be when it comes to information about conspiracy theories. But I'm going to give credit to user Ascended Minds, and this is 6 years ago, so he wrote a thread that compared our timeline to the years 2004 to 2005. He also proposed that there may be one suspect involved. So he's talking about the Mandela effect. And he says, was it common knowledge that Donald Trump's uncle was a professor at MIT who prominently assisted in World War II? I can understand why the government wouldn't want to highlight this information, as it's been brought up in conspiracy circles and investigated further. Have they successfully bombarded us with so many conspiracies and theories that we would overlook something as important as this? Trump's family received Nikola Tesla's personal that I knew there was a connection between him and Tesla. I knew there was some sort of like technological connection there. I just couldn't make that connection immediately. I thought it might have been Tesla. So Trump's family received Nikola Tesla's personal scientific research. It was immediately brought to John Trump to be interpreted when Tesla died. So if we go down the rabbit hole, in 1943, as the technical aide in Division 14 of the NDRC, Trump reviewed and analyzed the papers of Dr. Nikola Tesla when Dr. Tesla died in an NY hotel. The research was completed on behalf of Alien Property Custodian Office in Washington, D.C. During 1942, this is John Trump, by the way. This is not Donald Trump. Worked alongside Alfred Lee Loomis. Trump became secretary of the Microwave Committee, a subcommittee of NDRC. The director of the Microwave Committee was Alfred Lee Loomis, the millionaire physicist who decided to create a laboratory. Alfred Lee Loomis assisted in developing the atomic bomb as part of the Manhattan Project, which is interesting because we have the Manhattan Project connection there. We know all about the Manhattan Project through previous episodes. He invented the Aberdeen chronography for measuring muzzle velocities, contributed significantly, perhaps critically, according to Luis Alvarez, to the development of a ground-controlled approach technology for aircraft, and participated in preliminary meetings of the Manhattan Project. Very interesting. Alfred Lee Loomis helped build the first cyclotron. A March 1940 meeting at the University of California at Berkeley concerning the planned 184-inch cyclotron seen on the blackboard. Interesting. The first cyclotron was patented by Leo Szilard, who also worked on the Manhattan Project. He was present when this was achieved on December 2nd, 1942. He worked for the Manhattan Project's metallurgical laboratory on aspects of nuclear reactor design. Okay, so here's when CERN comes into play, and we all know about CERN, the Hadron Collider at CERN, which is a nice little connection. The invention of the first cyclotron led to the invention of the Heidelberg cyclotron. How did I come to this conclusion? The Heidelberg cyclotron was proposed in 1932 by George Gamow, a Nazi physicist. Guess where George Gamow frequently visited? The same place where they gathered to develop the first cyclotron. This is how the Germans were able to build their own. Gamow worked at George Washington University from 1934 until 1954, where he became a visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley. CERN was established by Prince Bernhard, and this was all a revenge plot against Nazi Germany. Ooh. After World War I, Bernhard's family lost their German principality and the revenue they had, which accompanied it. But the family was still wealthy, and Bernhard spent his early years at Castle Reckenwald. Could be butchering all this, by the way. Don't quote me on all this. Prince Bernhard gathered scientists to scour Germany to retrieve all of his research on the Heidelberg cyclotron. Prince Bernhard helped from the European Organization for Nuclear Research. In the aftermath of World War II, this report, Prince Bernhard financed a private investigative force of over 200 former British and German intelligence operatives to scour Germany for all documents and scientific literature related to the Heidelberg cyclotron, agreed to form and finance the European Organization for Nuclear Research, which is CERN. Prince Bernhard, a former Nazi, was co-founder of the Bilderberg Group. Ooh, interesting. Prior to World War II, he was a member of the Nazi Party of Germany and Reiter SS officer, whose main/central duty was securing Western nation funding for Waffenamt, which is German Army Weapons Agency, scientific projects, most particularly the Heidelberg cyclotron. Okay, now we go on. In 1954, the co-founder of the International Bilderberg Group, which has not met annually since then to discuss corporate globalization and other issues concerning Europe and North America. This is specifically why the Bilderberg Group was founded and created CERN. The convention establishing CERN was ratified on September 29, 1954 by 12 countries in Western Europe. These are 200 scientists who scoured the Germany for Prince Bernhard's research on Heidelberg cyclotron. I hope you guys are understanding the implications. Back to John Trump and Alfred Lee Loomis. Loomis was responsible for inventing the K-complex. K-complexes have two primary functions. First, suppressing cortical arousal in response to stimuli that the sleeping brain evaluates not to signal danger. And second, aiding sleep-based memory consolidation. Memory consolidation? He also pioneered techniques for EEGs. Working with Edmund Newton Harvey, he co-invented the microscope centrifuge and pioneered techniques for electroencephalography. No idea what that is. This guy worked heavily with brainwave states. He understood and it valued the importance of brain's frequency. Everything is connected. I hope we're seeing the bigger picture. Who else has gone down this rabbit hole? That's actually quite interesting. So he is basically proposing that time travel is scientifically possible. There's a lot of connections between Trump or John Trump's family and things like the Bilderberg Group and CERN, because he worked with the people that were in courts with them, which is quite interesting. He also suggests that time travel is scientifically possible. So if John Trump's access to these technologies that Tesla had perhaps gave him access to a time traveling device, you never know. Maybe he's been traveling through time and editing the patterns of history for Trump to be the president now and to be coming in as the Antichrist. Ooh! Now that's an interesting thought.
And that leads to another rabbit hole.
100%. I mean, you have the whole thing with CERN. I know a lot of people would argue that CERN is just a massive psyop to scare people. Yeah. But at the same time, they are smashing particles together, and you have the whole like interdimensional thing at the minute. There just seems to be some sort of interdimensional, multidimensional, multiverse obsession in popular culture at the minute, doesn't there really? Like you have Into the Spider-Verse, which is basically about it's basically about CERN, really, like the smashing particles together, and then they create like different dimensions to repose, and then different dimensions get pulled into this dimension, you know. And is that like what we're seeing play out at the minute? You never know.
Mm-hmm.
And is time travel possible through like particles and stuff like that? And
Possibly. Well,
Interesting.
well, this is how far the rabbit hole goes, where research is done in depth to see if this thing is possible with time travel. And have you got anything more to share regarding this episode about Mr. Donald Trump?
Not really. Honestly, like I think there's so much going on, and I think the only thing we can do is wait and see what happens in the next year or so. I do think he's a very prominent figure. I think he's very controversial. I think he's very polarizing and significant in some sort of way, and I think we're going to see something quite big happen. I also forgot to mention as well that about the whole thing with Donald Duck and Donald Trump. So, you know, there was the whole meme like back in the day of like Donald Duck. If you turn him upside down, he looks like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Is that by design? Is Trump one of these figures that is always been in the script and just has to be there? And that's perhaps why, because he's the Antichrist and he's going to come in, be the false savior. Time will tell, I guess. Time will tell. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, time will tell indeed. And you know, that's why you sent me that Donald Duck gift to me yesterday before we started.
I wasn't sure if you get it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Donald Duck, Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, that's all from us this episode. I hope you find some value on it. And look, you know, Donald Trump, as we know, decisive character, but like we said before, time will tell to see whether we predict right that he is going to be the next president. If he is, and if you're from America, don't get emotionally invested in the politics. You know, just continue living your life day by day. And for those living in the rest of the world, you know, the same to you as well. Just live your life day by day and just don't get distracted by it.
Facts. It's all about neutrality.
Yes, 100%. Yes, that's it. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. Some good things coming soon.
Take it away, Trump.
That's it.
This is the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, saying thank you so much, for tuning in for this episode of the Occult Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and also comment, because it helps the algorithm. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, go to @theoccultpod_13. That is for Instagram and Twitter. And have a great rest of your day, okay? Thank you so much.